Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you are not. I am EDJ and we are continuing with the Hannibal series. So last time we saw, Hannibal completely wreck Consul Longus. And yeah, we're just gonna continue, through many of the battles of the Second Punic War. So this is going to be interesting. I guess we're going to move away from Hannibal and cover what's going on here in, Spain, which is interesting because I know next to nothing in regards to how the rest of Carthage was doing while Hannibal's here winning brilliant successes. Like I said, I've heard they didn't do so hot. Obviously, they're not Hannibal. Unfortunately, there can only be one Hannibal at the era. So, but who knows, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, right? So, yeah, I guess we ought to get to it, huh? So, if you want to watch the original video without me speaking, or talking, or pausing, the link down in the description down below. With that said, let's learn, some more history, and let us see the Battle of the Ebro.
Early in 217 BC, the Roman Senate is still reeling from the defeat at Trebia. But determined to strike back at Hannibal, they look to other theatres to try and shift the balance of war. The Roman army that was initially sent to stop the Carthaginian general from reaching Italy is now in Iberia with new objectives, under the command of Gnaeus Scipio.
What the heck? Naval history, alright.
After first arriving in Iberia in early autumn of 218 BC, Gnaeus Cornelius Scipio Calvus defeated and captured Hanno, along with thousands of Carthaginian troops. He also seized the rich baggage train that Hannibal left behind when he marched into the Pyrenees Mountains while on his way to Italy. But despite this victory, Gnaeus lost many of his ship crews during Hasdrubal Barca's raid into the Roman enclave, which crippled his fleet. Luckily for the Romans, Hasdrubal was outnumbered 2-1, and he retreated soon after this minor victory, as he could not mount a full-scale offensive. Both generals used the winter months to regroup and plan for the coming year. The Roman general's main objective is to prevent Iberian reinforcements from reaching Hannibal by land. His second objective is to put pressure on Carthaginian holdings in Iberia by any means. From his base at Tarraco, Gnaeus spends months consolidating his position. He reaches out to various tribes to establish friendly relations through diplomacy and trade, and looks to broker alliances by offering the tribes protection against the Carthaginians. It doesn't take too long to persuade many locals to join the Roman cause, because just as most Gauls in Italy hate the Romans, so too the tribes of northern Iberia despise the Carthaginians. And although many communities are still apprehensive about confronting Carthage, especially those on the border, tribes further north of the Ebro eagerly ally themselves to Rome. Gnaeus also strengthens ties with the Greek cities, especially Massilia, a very prosperous city that commits to sending her experienced fleet to help the Romans. And as promised, Gnaeus dispatches garrisons to defend his allies over the coming months. He also garrisons the Ebro River, anticipating an invasion by Hasdrubal Barca in the spring, and arranges the purchase of food and supplies from the locals. In addition, he distributes the plunder taken from Hannibal's baggage train to his army, which boosts his popularity with the troops.
Join large-scale battles with military vehicles. The online action game War Thunder has received a major update.
Okay, he seems to be doing really well here, making allies, consolidating his strength, preparing the long-term battle. Overall, Scipio's just handling this very well, very competently. Let's see if Hasdrubal, how he will respond to all this.
Across the Ebro, Hasdrubal Barca posts garrisons along the river to ward off Roman raids and marches back to his winter quarters in New Carthage. Hasdrubal currently has 15,000 troops at his disposal. But the manpower reserves and the riches of Carthaginian Iberia give Hasdrubal enough muscle to quickly respond to the Roman threat. He spends the winter months resting his army, raising funds for new recruits, and stockpiling provisions for the upcoming campaign. Ships are repaired, and additional ships are brought in, along with new ship crews, recruited mainly from the Turdetani tribes in southern Iberia. By spring of 217 BC, Hasdrubal musters a large enough army to mount an offensive against Gnaeus. Carthaginians march out of New Carthage. Hasdrubal personally leads the ground forces, while he puts the fleet of over 40 ships under the command of Himilco. The fleet sails along the coast, closely keeping pace with the army on land, under whose protection the crews can beach their ships every night to rest. While Hasdrubal initially had 15,000 troops after Hannibal departed from Iberia, it is unknown how many new troops he recruited for the campaign of 217 BC. But considering that Gnaeus received reports from his scouts of the approaching Carthaginians and yet didn't follow his first instinct to face them in battle, it is safe to assume that the size of Hasdrubal's army was exceedingly strong, which dissuaded the Roman general from giving battle.
Interesting.
Furthermore, Hasdrubal could potentially tap into his vast manpower pool, while Gnaeus won't be receiving any reinforcements for at least a year. Another reason for the Roman general to remain cautious. Gnaeus decides to march out of Tarraco and take up a defensive position on the Ebro, with his ships following close by. Aware that the Carthaginian fleet can flank him and cut his supply lines, he handpicks his best troops from the legions and loads them into 35 ships, some of which came from Massilia, with their experienced and reputable crews. With his fleet guarding his flank, the Roman general reaches within 15 kilometers of the Ebro.
I'm very excited to see how this plays out, because like I said, I don't know anything about Hasdrubal and how he stacks up, you know, with Hannibal, or if he's gonna be good or not. But yeah, I think he made a good first move by, you know, crippling the Roman navy, but obviously now they're making allies with other navies. And so yeah, that opening part was just them essentially preparing, you know, for battle and for the campaign. Hasdrubal has assembled apparently a strong enough force where he feels confident he can fight now. And yeah, taking into account that Scipio's not going to receive reinforcements for at least a year, yeah, it makes sense to go a little bit more on the offensive and, you know, not let the enemy consolidate strength anymore. Though, I don't know, Rome's Rome at the end of the day. Like, Hasdrubal, I hope you're good. Good luck to you, man.
His plan is to concentrate his efforts on the sea. He temporarily stops and sends 2 Massilian ships to scout ahead. With his army vastly outnumbered, he recognizes that if Hasdrubal successfully surrounds or besieges his positions, the superior Carthaginian fleet could cut off the Roman seaborne supply lines. Therefore, his plan is to deal a knockout blow, or at least cripple the Carthaginian fleet. Massilian scouts soon return with reports that the Carthaginians are encamped at the mouth of the Ebro, their ships still beached and unmanned since the night before. Looking to seize the fortunate opportunity, Gnaeus gives his ships the signal to attack immediately, hoping to catch the enemy off guard. They make haste towards the Ebro, formed in 2 lines. The higher quality Massilian ships are in the front, their crews leading the way, while the Roman ships are formed up behind them. However,
Alright, that was a pretty bold opening move. Obviously, he sees the direness of his situation, so yeah, he's going for the, as he just put it, the knockout blow, right? And I don't know if he's caught them off guard or not, I'm just saying, what do I think about that? Makes sense, yeah, I definitely see the logic behind his reasoning there. And I guess we'll see if it works, because I do know that, sure, yeah, his Roman navy has kind of been crippled due to the loss that Hasdrubal inflicted on them, but then again, if the Romans could just close that gap, it's kind of over. And the Massilians, he keeps hyping up their naval prowess, so obviously, yeah, it doesn't seem good for the Carthaginians. Again, I'm like kind of on the edge of my seat right now. I don't know what's about to happen.
Carthaginian scouts along the coast spot the enemy fleet and sound the alarm. Hasdrubal draws up his land forces on the beach and orders Himilco to embark his crews and put to sea straight away.
Hyundai Ioniq 5 versus Tesla Model Y. Look what Ioniq 5 has and what Tesla...
The Carthaginians, although caught by surprise, have confidence in their ships. Hasdrubal's troops cheer on the crews as they close the distance to meet the Romans. 2 Massilian ships are intercepted. Himilco's men rush to board the enemy vessels. On the right flank, Carthaginian ships double up on the Romans. As they board the enemy, Himilco's crews begin overwhelming the Massilians and Romans on the right. Meanwhile, chaotic fighting spreads in the center as the Romans latch onto several enemy vessels. Gnaeus' men are firmly on the back foot and losing ground. The Carthaginians outpaced and outmaneuvered his fleet.
I'm a little shocked that they did that. I was not expecting that, because, you know, after learning about, you know, the First Punic War and just how Rome had the superior navy, you know, the biggest thing with the Romans was that they could turn naval battles into infantry land battles by boarding ships. It seems to me that the Carthaginians took the initiative this time and boarded them, though obviously it was kind of smart that they doubled up, so, you know, they could have twice the manpower boarding, as to not give the Romans a numerical advantage in that regard. So yeah, overall, very... We'll see how it plays out. I don't want to be like, genius, and then immediately they lose, right? But, it's bold, I'll say that.
But the battle-hardened Roman troops in the center hold their ground. Disciplined and organized, they slowly manage to turn the tide by sheer brute force. The legionaries begin pushing the Carthaginians back. In the chaotic fighting, they managed to sink one Carthaginian ship, together with its entire crew. Then another.
Oh my goodness.
Some of Himilco's men...
Like I said, man, like, the moment you close the gap, the Romans become unstoppable, so it seems like a replay, right? I mean, they had the advantage at the beginning, but at the end, the Romans are just probably the best fighting force of the era, you know? Yeah.
Men begin to waver. 4 more ships in the center are crippled and left adrift with their oars shattered. Seeing the gaping hole in their line, panic among some of Himilco's crews turns into a hasty, disorganized retreat toward the shore. Hasdrubal can only watch as the Romans vigorously pursue his fleet. His troops can do little to help the retreating ships. Ironically, having his army deployed on the beach offered a clear and safe escape route for the ships, which may have motivated some of the crews to flee, rather than fight and risk death. This would certainly explain the sudden collapse of morale among Himilco's men.
That makes sense.
The Carthaginian fleet finally reaches the shore. Crews beach their ships and hastily disembark, abandoning their vessels in search for safety within Hasdrubal's army. But the Romans aren't done yet. They boldly continued towards the shore, despite the risk of running their ships aground or being attacked by Hasdrubal's troops. To the average observer, it must have seemed like madness to come so close to the shore. But Gnaeus is willing to take the risk. His ships rush in, quickly latching onto Carthaginian vessels that are still seaworthy, and begin towing them away.
Wow. Wow.
Seeming stunned, the Carthaginians fail to react in time. By the time they realize what has happened, the Romans sail downstream, having captured 25 of their ships.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think I was right in saying my assessment. Hannibal carried Carthage. Yeah, that's embarrassing.
At first, the defeat at the Ebro seemingly changed little. Over the coming months, Hasdrubal, with his army intact, puts pressure on the tribes to rise against Rome, stretching Gnaeus to the limit. But the Carthaginian general is also forced to deal with revolts in southern Iberia. Both sides spend over a year quelling revolts and regrouping. For the Romans, after a series of defeats suffered against Hannibal in Italy, news of Gnaeus' success is much welcomed by the Senate. Encouraged, they make plans to send reinforcements to Iberia under the command of Gnaeus' brother, Publius, whose term as consul ended a few months ago. Fully recovered from his wounds, within a year, Publius would arrive with 20 to 30 ships and 8,000 troops, along with food and supplies. However, it is Gnaeus' perseverance at the Ebro that would prove to be the turning point of the war in Iberia. For the next 10 years, the Carthaginian Iberian coast would be undefended. Exposed to Roman raids, Carthage will have to divert a lot of manpower to defend its Iberian towns and countryside. And over the coming years, the Scipio brothers will pose a serious threat to the Carthaginian war effort. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and subscribe.
Okay, so right after the Battle of Ebro, a fleet of 70 Carthaginian ships sailed from Carthage to Sardinia with the aim of reaching Pisa to reinforce Hannibal with men and supplies. The expedition was intercepted and finally repulsed during the summer. Okay, so Gnaeus, Scipio achieved 3 major things at Ebro. He reduced Hannibal's capability to reinforce from Iberia, permanently secured supply lines across the sea, established Roman dominance over the Iberian coast. In early 217 BC, 2 new consuls were elected, Servilius Geminus and Gaius Flaminius, but more on them in the next episode. So yeah, you know, yeah, a lot of people were like, yeah, Carthage didn't support Hannibal as much as they probably should have, and, you know, kind of blame Carthage a lot for Hannibal's defeat. And I think to a degree, yeah, they didn't try their hardest and give everything, but at the same time, they did make efforts. Like, you know, like, obviously, Carthaginian ships were trying to get to him, but it's just the Roman naval superiority would make it hard to reinforce Hannibal, and that's kind of, I guess, a flaw in Hannibal's overall strategy. He had no supply lines. He couldn't afford a stream of reinforcements from, you know, his own, you know, places, like Hispania and whatnot. He had to really, he was essentially trapped in Italy, right? And, yeah, obviously, I do think it is, I'm not saying the Carthaginians are completely innocent, but at the same time, supplying Hannibal is not going to be easy. Like, Roman naval superiority and, you know, it's just, it would make it really hard to supply Hannibal. Though at the same time, I do believe at the same time, they didn't try their hardest to help him out. I think it's a bit of both, it's a little bit of both, to be honest, as I see it, but yeah, overall Hannibal carried this war for the Carthaginians, because, yeah, for what I'm getting, the rest didn't do so hot. And yeah, that's kind of it, guys. I'm gonna end the video right here, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.